I brought a sweater. Okay, trying to figure out where this is going. How's this going?
Down arrow.
Down there, okay. Okay, quick little overview. We'll do some quick introductions here. But basically we'll be breaking this up in kind of two halves. Just do a quick little introduction to kind of set the tone or the mood for the panel. I believe Joanne's going to talk a little bit about critiquing with kindness. So the first half will deal primarily with public address events, and then we'll dig deeper into the interp events and probably take a little break in between there. Okay, she put lead judge on there. I think it really should say old judge. I didn't do the work on this panel. They all did. I'm just here to kind of help organize our thoughts. So, round of applause to these individuals who put a lot of time and energy into today's panel. A little bit of background on each of us. First of all, I'm so impressed with how this has grown from many, many moons ago when I was president of the NSAA, and we were really trying to get this kind of up and running, and now look at you guys. And like Taryn said, we're kind of preaching to the choir. You know, the best of us are here. But we're all an integral part of uplifting this activity. For those of you my age and older who have been coaching for a long time, isn't it remarkable how speech and play production has grown? Phenomenal growth in just a matter of a few decades. And who knows where it's going to go from there. This isn't just about coaches and extremely gifted and talented kids. It's also about us, the judges. I just want to remind you that we are all an integral component of the growth of this activity. So, taking time out of your wonderful summer to be here, kudos to you. Okay, I'm Peggy Bell. I'm from Battle Creek. I taught there for almost 3 decades, and actually just 2 decades, until my kids all graduated. And then I taught at Norfolk High. I loved coaching. I stepped away from coaching in 2019, and I've still been judging. I taught for a little bit at Wayne State College too. But this activity is such a huge part of who I am. And now that I'm semi-retired, I finally get sleep. Unlike those of you who are still in the trenches. Okay, we'll pass it on to the next Travis.
I could probably yell and hear me, but I won't say it.
My name is Travis Graff-Klein. I've been at Conestoga going into my fourth year as the assistant one act and speech coach. I don't work in a classroom every day. I actually work for Omaha Performing Arts in my career. So if you are at the hall end of the Orpheum University Halls, you'll see me because I'm at every show. So it's been a pleasure to be Jess's assistant, so I'll pass it on to her.
Hi, I'm Jessica Schultemeyer. I am the head one act and speech coach. I also run our junior high program at Conestoga. I've been there for, I'm going to be starting in year 21 this year. And our claim to fame is that I started with our junior high and high school program. We didn't have those at our school, so we've kind of done kind of a grassroots thing at Conestoga to get speech up and going. And so that's kind of our background.
Hi, my name's Dan Jensen. I spent most of my coaching time in Gothenburg. Bounced around for a while, basically coached speech and debate for 31 years. Been judging since 1986. I think there were dinosaurs on the earth then. Still live in Gothenburg and recently retired, so I'm pretty excited to get to spend more time doing this stuff.
Good afternoon, I'm Joanne Coates. I'm sorry you're cold. I'm a retired one act and speech coach. I've been judging since 1997. My husband pulled me into it, kicking and screaming, and I'm sure a lot of you would like to have me shoved out kicking and screaming, but I am still here. I judge wherever I can pull up a contract
I'm not scared to travel, and I hope you guys enjoy our panel today.
Hi friends, my name is Jael. That's my name, I promise. I did not make it up. So it's a lot like Janelle without the N, or if you've ever had the hiccups and try to talk at the same time. I know. It's easy way to remember. So I actually was one of Mr. Dan Jensen's at Gothenburg. I called him Mama Duck. And I completed speech all 4 years and I loved it. In college I started judging, but it was like 1 or 2 meets. And because speech gave so much to me as a high school student, it was where I found my people, and it really helped me as a person. I decided that I was just going to continue judging all the time, and I would give back to Gothenburg. And since I lived in South Central Nebraska for like 21 years, I judged for Gothenburg. And now I live in Northeast Nebraska, I live in Hartington, and I'm still judging. But my profession is higher education. I work at Northeast Community College, and I'm a first-year advisor.
My name is Harold Scott. How many of you have suffered from, let's see what it's called? Yeah, memory loss, there we go. Yes, imposter syndrome. Have you ever had moments where you're like, I feel like I don't belong with this group? This is one of those moments. I've done this for years. My note I said to myself was, I may not know art, but I know what I like. And so that's where my background comes from. I've been a play production and speech coach off and on for 40-some years. Recently, a couple of years ago, retired. And I was a school administrator and the speech coach, and I did a little bit of everything. And the fun fact for me is that once I left my position, my job of everything that I did is now being done by 4 people. So, no wonder I was so tired. But looking forward to presenting to you today and whoever's next on the list. I think that may be all of us.
Okay, just a couple quick slides to kind of set the tone. As judges, I think our role is kind of threefold. Well, it's multifaceted, but I just picked 3 things to kind of focus on. First of all, and most importantly, it's educational, analytical. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus to truly be present in the round. We tell our students that they need to be totally present in their performance, but when you're judging round after round on a long day, sometimes it's hard to just kind of really focus in on who is in front of you, the performance at hand, and to give that really rich analytical feedback, and educational to help them grow. But we're also administrative in a way. Anybody who's ran a tournament knows what a beast it can be. And trying to run down some ballots or a judge, it can really throw the whole tournament off. So I think we really play a vital role in the administrative component of any tournament as well. And then finally, I think, we are lucky. We get to be spectators. Yeah, we're working while we're, enjoying these jaw-dropping performances. But as a judge, we too are modeling for the rest of the room how to be a good spectator too. And then the next slide on the art. There is a lot of talent in this room. Whether you ever did speech or theater yourself, you are part of that art. We talk about how amazing these high school kids are. And it is, you have to kind of pinch yourself, remind yourself that you're watching a high school kid. But that same kind of art, I think, is important on our end of the ballot as well. God forbid we don't get judged on our spelling, our penmanship, all those conventions when it comes to the 6 traits of writing. But as a former English teacher, I think we need to think about that a little bit too when we're composing those ballots. You don't have a lot of time. And if you're like me, when I'm writing one word, I'm already thinking about the next word and my spelling gets all crazy. But some of those 6 traits are still really important in a powerful ballot, that you're critiquing specific ideas, not just writing generic, platitudes and comments on there. Hopefully your ballot is somewhat organized. I know mine isn't, because I tend to go more chronological than category. But how in the world is a coach or a student going to make use of your ballot if they can't figure out which comments go to which criteria. I also think it's important that our ballots have voice. My ballot should sound different than Harold's or Joanne's or Dan's or anybody's ballot. Just like we want every individual performance to have its own unique feel, our ballot should reflect who we are as well. So some of that personality is okay to come through the ballot too. And then word choice. If you're like me, sometimes you fall into a pattern of kind of using the same expressions over and over again. How do we make sure that we keep those ballots meaningful to that particular person, not just that event or that round or that tournament? But how do we craft meaningful phrases? You know, I always comment that I want kids to come up with those wonderful word phrases in sentences and syntax that lingers way beyond the round. But sometimes if we're really artistic with the way that we compose a ballot, there can be some profound, meaningful comments that linger with that student or coach as well. What can we do to make sure those ballots are unique? That they're kind of a keeper, not just something like, oh my God, they wrote 5 good things and gave me 5th. What can you do to help elevate that performance? Essentially, everything that we're doing is trying to make that kid better for the next tournament, not just for the end of the year, but is there some feedback you can give them as a judge who's almost working like a proxy coach to help that student literally improve, maybe even for the next round if they have access to some of your comments, but how are they definitely going to use that to build for the next tournament? And then we'll be talking about this throughout the panel today, but try to reconnect with your why. Why are you here? Maybe you weren't a coach, but there is some sort of background that drew you to the art of speech and play performance. Why is it that you love this activity and choose to give back to it by being a judge? Because Lord knows it's not for making all that money. But it is a treat. You know, I don't care if I'm getting $50, $75, whatever it is. I get to earn a little bit of money while also enjoying fabulous entertainment. I also feel like it keeps me smart. Like I can talk to friends like, oh my God, I heard this speech last week and it was about blah, blah, blah. So we're very lucky that we get to do something that's giving back to the community, but yet we take so much from it as well. Okay, I will turn it over to the rest of the panel now. Joanne, I think, is next.
So here we are again, another year of workshops. And what do? We cuss and discuss the rules. We've learned the new rules, we're still talking about the old rules, if they're all dressed the same, is that costuming? How many boxes can we have? What shape of the boxes? What size of the boxes? What color of the boxes? And can we stack the boxes? And don't forget, a chair is a chair is a chair. Now, I am going to step outside that box. Who would expect an old woman with purple hair to actually step outside of a box and do something different? I want to talk about kindness to the kids. Words are powerful. And depending on how you write things, you can really hurt some of these kids. Dr. Phil says it takes 1,000 attaboys or attagirls to erase one bad thing. Several years ago, I judged a young lady on abortion. We've talked about that several times. And I thought she did a good job. It was persuasive. And I went on to the rest of my rounds, and the coach came up to me, and she was really upset, and I think, oh, what did I write wrong? I don't mind talking to you coaches, just don't attack me. I will discuss ballots with you. And she said, look at this ballot. Look at what they wrote on her ballot. It was the same girl on abortion. And the only thing that was written on the ballot was, I'm tired of listening to abortion speeches, find another topic. I was before raising bucks. The coach kept in contact with me for quite a while because she was really concerned about this girl going on the field. That one ballot, she wanted to quit. She had all good ballots other than that. It took several weeks to get this girl back on her feet again, to want to do speech. And she did abortion. She didn't go to state, but she did well. Words can hurt. You can listen to 5 speeches of abortion. You can go into serious prose and listen to 5 different kill mockingbirds, and you're going to hear something different every time. And that is what you're supposed to judge them for, what they are giving you at that moment. I don't care if you're tired of hearing it. They want to tell you, they've worked hard. They've done the research. They're excited. Some of these kids, this is all they have. They're not the jocks. They're not the musicians. This is it. They may even have a bad home life. And this is all they have. So, please be kind. I know I've got people sitting there going, well, I remember when you wrote, I probably did, and I apologize. But I really do try. When I'm writing about it, I will say, I think maybe you should, or I think maybe if you did, instead of saying, you need to do this, and you need to do that, if it's my idea, I put it on me, and I try to make it sound a little nicer. I mean, there are some things that you shake your head and you think, oh my gosh, what am I going to write? Because you have to be kind. Tell them to keep working. You're building. It's going to come together. Whatever it takes to bolster these kids, because they're standing in front of people they don't know, like I'm doing right now, and they're being judged by somebody they don't know, like I'm doing right now. And this is what they want to do. We have to give them credit for that. So please, remember, we're here for the kids. We're not here for the coaches. We're not here for the judges. We're here for the kids. Keep that in mind when you see these kids in front of you, whether they're stumbling, whether they're talking too fast, whether they're amazing, whether they're not. Just be very kind. I'll get up my soapbox. Thank you.
Okay, these are the 5 criteria on the ballot for platform speeches, especially informative, entertainment, and persuasive. Extemporaneous goes a little different direction. Tyler thought I should have the very exciting topic of thesis analysis. So first of all, I kind of want to put a plug in here for why we even have ballot criteria. I find that having ballot criteria forces us to look at the big picture. It's always interesting to me when I judge the finals round with a panel of judges, and we turn in our ballots and we walk away and talk about where we placed different students and why. It's interesting to me to see we kind of lean towards certain criteria, I guess, personally. Some people really like to see a smooth delivery. Some people like to hammer away at analysis. Some people tend to get hung up on quotations and things like that. So I think that having ballot criteria causes us to think outside of the areas where we are personally interested. Having ballot criteria really helps us give a basis for our decision on the ballot also. And I found that it really helps in those very close rounds. I think back to a couple of years ago, judging a district contest. The other judge and I, no, this is a conference contest, the other judge and I were called back to break a tie after it was tabulated, and we couldn't do it, and we couldn't do it, and we couldn't do it, and finally the director got the book out and said, here's the 5 criteria for this speech. Let's go through each of those, and that finally solved the problem for us. And it gives you a systematic approach to your judging. There are 5 criteria, 50 rating points, and I know rating points used to mean a lot more than they do now in the sense of breaking ties, but there's a reason for that. If we go back here, whoops. Thesis, organization, content, style and language, and delivery. How many people in here remember the ballot 2 improvements ago when each of these criteria had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? That's kind of where I started out with my judging. And you had to circle 8 or 9 on thesis, and you had to circle maybe a 10 on organization and add those up, and that became how many rating points they got out of 50. And we've changed that a little bit, and I was actually very opposed to that change because I think it forces us to look at the criteria. And there are times when I'm judging when I still think that way, looking at each criteria and making sure that my score is justified. So like I said, entertainment, informative, and persuasive. The ballot criteria is identical for those 3. Extemporaneous is a little bit different, so we'll get to that later. First of all, we want a clearly stated thesis that is appropriate for the event. I'm not English teacher when it comes to thesis. It does not have to be designed a very specific way for me personally. I want to know where we're going. I want to know what to expect as a judge. Because if I don't know that somehow in the introduction, then I waste time and attention trying to figure out where you're going with this. So instead of being able to categorize it during the speech. I think sometimes students get a little tangled up in clever wording, and their thesis kind of misleads us and kind of takes us in a different direction. So thesis should be stated very clearly. One of my favorite things in the judge's manual is this little blip on persuasive. The speaker should not be expected to solve any of the great problems of the day. Rather, he should discuss intelligently with a degree of originality in an interesting manner and with some profit to his or her audience, the topic he or she has chosen. And that goes right along with what Joanne was just talking about. It may not be a new, fresh topic to you, but it probably is to that student. And a lot of different angles fit into persuasive. It doesn't have to pose a problem and solve that problem. It can simply be motivational. It can simply expose a problem. So don't get caught up as a judge expecting a certain approach and format when it comes to that thesis. This is one that I think is a little tricky to judge on. It needs to be valid, reasonable, and relevant as a topic. Says who? Valid to who? Reasonable to who? Because I look at the world differently than a 16-year-old student does. And things are very reasonable and important to me that they haven't experienced yet. So I say in regards to valid, reasonable, and relevant, be sure to keep your personal bias out of it. With me, if it's wholesome and we gain something, I'm good with it as a topic. I think in the overall scheme of things, I just ask, does this topic have value? And it's pretty rare to find one that doesn't. And this isn't just persuasive, this is informative and entertainment as well. Okay? This goes along with what Joanne was just talking about also, a genuine and creative topic. There's not a whole lot that hasn't been a problem for many, many years to talk about. Informative, yes, there are some new technological advances in the world, but there's a lot of things that have been around for a long time. And that's okay. Again, it probably is new to that student delivering the speech. And I really appreciate a new, fresh approach to these topics that maybe judges who have been judging for 30 plus years have heard before. Okay, that's the criteria on the platform side, and then we go to extemporaneous, okay? Extemp actually is one of my favorite events to judge. And here's what I'm looking for here in an extemp speech when it comes to analysis and thesis. First of all, I want a clear thesis statement. I think that somehow the speaker should let you know where they're going very early on. They don't have to, but I prefer to hear them state the question and answer that question in their introduction. That way my mind is clear and I'm able to categorize what they have to say, what's coming up. So I like to see that early on. We want some depth to analysis, okay? I want to see multiple reasons to accept the answer that student chose for that question. And I always think of this as subpoints. If there's only one reason to believe your answer is correct, that doesn't carry as much weight as if you have 3 reasons to accept that your answer is correct. And that helps me take a little personal bias out of it also, because extemp can be very challenging to keep biases out of it, and that's the next thing. Keep your personal or political bias out of your decision. That's tough to do, especially in this world today. People's political biases are plastered everywhere in the world, and too often we can't even get along in a conversation without those coming up. If the speaker has taken a stand, discuss the topic intelligently with logical evidence and analysis to support the position, then the speaker has done his or her job. And they don't have to play the guessing game of, is their judge a Democrat or a Republican? Okay? Let them choose their answer, and if they support it well with reasonable evidence, they've done their job. The other part of extemporaneous is to stick to the general and exact purpose of the topic and answer the question. This is, I guess I want to discuss the pitfall here. I found an extemp question that would be easy to get sidetracked. To what extent should the National Guard be used to quell instances of domestic unrest in the United States? What is that question asking? Is it asking our opinions about immigration policy? Is it asking the rightness or wrongness of what President Trump is doing? Or how reasonable or unreasonable it is that Californians are rioting? It really isn't at all. And so I want speakers to stick to the topic. And sometimes it gets a little gray, and like Karen said, give them the benefit of the doubt. And by gray area, I mean they discuss the general topic, but they don't really nail the question. It's very common for an extemper to have 3 main points in their speech, and the first point is always background of the situation. That really doesn't answer the question, but it does set us up, and it is basically topical. So make sure that they stick to the question and the actual question and not just the general topic. And Joanne is next with organization.
I was tickled when I was chosen to organization. I'm probably the most unorganized person in the world. I can go from one room of judging, hand my ballots in, go to the next room, and I can't find a stopwatch or my pen. You would think a person of this generation would have a place to put those things. But no, not me. I'm going to just dig through that tote until I find everything. So, we all have at least written one paper, right? It has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In my idea, and I'm not going by these because this is how my brain works, in my idea of an organization, of writing a speech, it's like a chocolate chip cookie. I know, roll your eyes at me. You're hungry for this chocolate chip cookie. Oh man, I can't wait to have that chocolate chip cookie. That should be your introduction. You should pull me in and want me to have that chocolate chip cookie too. Many times I have written, your first lines need to be bigger. Your first lines need to be bigger. Because you will pull me in and I'm going to sit up straighter and I'm going to lean in and I want to listen to what the rest of this chocolate chip cookie is going to bring me. Now the body is the flour and the butter and the sugar and the chocolate chips and the eggs, and you mix it all together and you blend it. All these transitions blend together. Am I making sense? Oh my goodness, nobody's fallen asleep yet. Should have turned the air conditioner off. But anyway, so all of this dough is mixed together. And it has, introduction has already said chocolate chip cookies. Now you have the dough. Now you're going to bake that cookie. Can't you almost taste it? It's warm, it's gooey, and the conclusion is satisfaction. I am satisfied with that chocolate cookie. From the thought of it, the introduction, through the body, to that chocolate chip cookie. And a lot of times, I will write, you need a bigger conclusion. Many times, kids will say, and then it was the and they drop that. Give me those last words. I want to hear that conclusion. That cookie was delicious. That is my organization for anything that you put together as far as I'm concerned. You have an introduction. You tell us what it's about. You have a body, and you make us want to hear that body from the introduction. And in the conclusion, boom, we're satisfied with the whole speech that you've given us. To me, it's simple, but having the kids write it is another story, and getting that through them. But this is the way my weird mind works, and that's the way I thought of organization when it comes to writing a paper. Love me or hate me, that's the way I found it. So, Harold is going to do content. Thank you.
My sections are going to be slightly different than most of the others, I think, probably. I'm just going to be hitting some highlights as I went through and studying the rubrics and studying the ballots. Did a lot of what folks have been talking about the last couple of days, is really getting into it and really studying the ballots. And that's more of what I did. So if we have I think the first one is just the rubric, and just focusing generally on the superior and within the rubric. If we can go ahead and go to the next, I think it breaks it down into 4 different activities. The first one I'm hitting is persuasive, and basically what I've done is gone into the the notes that are there and made some notes or thoughts on those. The sufficient supporting material, I think that needs to be balanced. She talked about the organization. I think each of the, if they're going to have 3 points, they need to be fairly balanced as far as how much information is there and how much supporting material. So oftentimes the first point is 4 minutes long, and then the next 2 are 30 seconds. And it's like, you know, is there enough supporting material to cover that? The other one on this one has to do with the documentation. And that focus for me is the citing of the sources. I like them to be complete if I'm going to get credit for that. Oftentimes, it's just not very complete. They'll say, according to Time Magazine, such and such and such and such. It's like, okay, what year, what month, who was the author? You know, I got to have a little bit more than just that, just to get a bit more completion. And then for the rest of those, within persuasive, it just needs to go beyond just information. We got to have that, the focus from the student as they're developing that persuasive topic, that they're just not giving me an informative speech. You've got to go that little bit step further and be able to do the supporting thoughts on that. On entertainment, did a little bit more with this one, just because I got into it a little bit more. Part of this was digging into the actual words that are listed there within the ballot, and I've got some definitions. And I know you're smart enough, and you guys are probably smarter than I am when you look at these words. But the first one has to do with, does the speech entertain and amuse? So I looked up amuse. It means to hold the attention of someone pleasantly, divert in an enjoyable and cheerful manner. So it can be amusing without being LOL, ROFL, or NSFW. Hopefully you know what those mean. And that's another thing within speeches. A lot of times they use acronyms and your audience may not know and your judge may not know because they're old like me. Laugh out loud, rolling on the floor laughing, not safe for work. So you want to make sure that they're making it that it is amusing. Your material needs to connect to the organization. Creativity and originality. It's amazing the number of times that I'm listening to an entertainment speech, and it's like, yep, I've heard that joke before. Yep, I heard that joke last night on some talk show. Yep, I heard that one about a year ago. So making sure that they're being original with what they're talking about. That it's more than a series of jokes, that it's actually a speech. That happens sometimes with that. The next word I focused on was fascination. Does it contain elements of humor and or fascination? Well, fascination, a state of intense interest or attraction often characterized by a feeling of being captivated or spellbound by something. It's a strong emotional response that can involve curiosity, wonder, and be able to learn more. You want to learn more about it. So making it creative. So sometimes the entertainment speeches end up, you feel like you're just watching an informative, and then they throw a joke in every once in a while. So you got to be careful of that. Then just a couple other notes on there. In entertainment, please don't insult your judge if you're talking to your students. Sometimes, I know I'm bald. You don't have to make that part of your speech that you adjusted just for me. Okay? And the other one, don't beg for first place. Give your speech. Because one of the things you're supposed to do is forget that you're listening to a speech contest. And when they say, give me first, give me 50, oh, yeah, you're in a speech contest. So let your work do that for you. Extemporaneous, again, material, it's more than just telling you. You need support of what you're doing. And again, with the documentation, is it documented? Again, we need the thorough citing. Now, I understand with extemporaneous that they're doing that on kind of a short notice and a little bit of time, but I've seen some great extempors that can cite their source specifically, and again others that just say, according to some magazine I read. It needs to, I've got to be able to believe that, and I know that some of them maybe fudge the material and what they're quoting and what article they got it from. I remember one time I was at a speech contest and someone was an extemp, but they'd also been in HI or something, and their sources that they quoted in their extemp were the authors of the HI that they had done. I'm like, wow, they write humorous prose and they speak on news articles? That's amazing. So, yeah. And then, be careful of that it's not dated February 31st, some of those kind of things. I guess the main thing for me with informative is, do the examples, does it add interest? Keeping me interested in what they're talking about. Sometimes the informatives are, we've heard it before, but you've got to make sure that I'm getting a fresh hearing of what you're talking about. And I think that's all for them, isn't it? All right. So that was the thing there with just giving you some ideas and things to look at, double checking about, make sure you're understanding about it. Next is, thank you, Jack.
About style and language, and before I deep dive into that, I want to give you an idea of where I'm coming from as a judge, and more so it's about having and finding your judging lens. And we talked about you are being a spectator. It's a really fun opportunity. However, as a judge, you are interpreting, prioritizing, and applying what is on that ballot in real time for these students in that feedback. So there are some questions that I have up here that you should be considering as you are judging. What are you looking for? What are you listening for? How are you, with that in mind, staying anchored to the ballot? And you can literally fill in the blank. What does style and language look like in this performance? Or any of the other criteria that we have and we'll be talking about. Looking at the ballot, what evidence are you using to give that rank to that student? And what you're writing on the ballot, going back to critiquing with kindness, is that going to help them grow? Is it going to be beneficial for them in the long run? And so something that I do